A woman I heard about recently landed in Rome after a 9-hour flight. Trip of a lifetime. Then she reached for her carry-on, a baggage claim, but one the gate agent had tagged and taken because overhead bins were full. The one with her blood pressure medication, her thyroid pills, and the anxiety medication she'd need for 2 weeks in a foreign country. The bag never showed up. She spent the first 3 days of her dream vacation in Italian pharmacies, on hold with her doctor at 3 a.m., crying in her hotel room. This was completely preventable with a packing strategy that takes 10 minutes to set up and works every single time. Before we get into the specifics, let's talk about why this matters right now. TSA rules around medications have gotten clearer in the past couple of years. But clearer doesn't mean simpler, and clearer in the United States doesn't mean anything once you land somewhere else. If you're traveling with prescription medications, over-the-counter pills, liquid medicines, insulin, inhalers, or any medical device, there are specific rules that can save you hours of stress. Or if you ignore them, cost you your entire trip. So let's walk through exactly how to pack your medications for air travel. Not the vague advice you've seen 100 times, but the actual step-by-step process that gets you through security without delays and keeps your medications safe no matter what happens to your luggage. We'll cover the one rule that matters more than everything else: how to organize your medical kit, what TSA actually allows for pills and liquids, how to handle needles and medical devices, the international documentation you need, and what to do when you're standing at the checkpoint. Plus a few free TSA resources that almost nobody uses, but absolutely should. Let's start with the single most important thing you'll hear in this entire video, and I'm calling it the golden rule for a reason. All of your essential medications belong in your personal item, not your carry-on, your personal item. The small bag that goes under the seat in front of you. Why does this distinction matter? Because airlines can and will take your rolling carry-on bag at the gate. They do it constantly now. Full flight, not enough overhead space, and suddenly your bag is getting a pink tag and disappearing down a conveyor belt to the cargo hold. That bag now has the same odds of showing up as any checked luggage, which is to say pretty good odds, but not perfect odds. And when we're talking about heart medication, insulin, or blood thinners, pretty good odds is not a phrase anyone wants to hear. Your personal item stays with you. Under the seat, on your lap if necessary. It boards when you board and lands when you land. So build this habit. When you start packing for any trip, the very first thing you do is put your medications in your personal item. Before the book, before the snacks, before the neck pillow. Medications go in first in an easily accessible outer pocket, and they stay there. If you remember nothing else from this video, remember that. Your personal item is your pharmacy. Everything else is negotiable. But knowing where to put your medications is only half the battle. You also need to organize them correctly. So let's talk about building your medical kit. Get yourself a clear bag. A gallon-sized Ziploc works fine. This becomes your dedicated medical kit, and it's separate from your regular toiletries bag. Completely separate, and I can't stress this enough. Do not mix medication with your toothpaste and deodorant. When those items go through the X-ray machine together, it creates visual clutter that can trigger additional screening. You'll be standing there explaining why your heart medication is nestled between your shampoo and your razor. All the line behind you grows increasingly impatient. Your medical kit should contain all your prescription medications, any medically necessary over-the-counter items, medical devices and supplies, cooling packs if you have temperature-sensitive medications, and your documentation. We'll talk about documentation in detail shortly. Keep this bag in an outer pocket of your personal item, not buried at the bottom under your tablet and your reading glasses. When you get to security, you're going to pull this out and put it in its own bin, so you want it accessible. Now here's a packing rule that will save you one day. Bring enough medication for your entire trip plus 5 to 7 extra days. Flights get canceled. Connections get missed. 2 days in Paris becomes 4 days in Paris because of a storm in Chicago. And depending on where you are and what medication you need, getting a refill might range from mildly inconvenient to genuinely impossible. Certain medications simply cannot be replaced abroad. Some ADHD medications are outright illegal in other countries. Certain controlled substances require permits that take weeks to obtain. Even common prescriptions might not exist in the same formulation overseas. Pack extra. Your future self, stranded somewhere unexpected, will thank you. With your medical kit organized, let's get into the specific rules for different types of medications, starting with the simplest category, pills and solid medications. For pills and solid medications on domestic U.S. flights, the rules are surprisingly relaxed. You can bring unlimited quantities in your carry-on. There's no maximum number of pills you're allowed to have. You don't technically need to keep pills in their original pharmacy bottles. TSA allows pill organizers, daily pill cases, even unlabeled containers. You could theoretically dump everything into a sandwich bag and TSA wouldn't confiscate it. That said, for controlled substances, original labeled bottles make your life dramatically easier. We're talking about medications like Adderall, Ambien, Xanax, Valium, prescription painkillers, and similar drugs. These are medications that have value on the black market, and security personnel know it. When you have them in original pharmacy bottles with your name clearly printed, there's no conversation to have. When they're loose in a plastic organizer mixed with your vitamins, there might be questions. Probably not, but maybe. And maybe is not a word you want floating around when you're trying to catch a flight. The easy solution is to keep using your daily pill organizer if that's what works for you. But also bring the original bottles, even if they're mostly empty. If anyone asks, you have immediate proof that these are your legitimately prescribed medications. One more thing worth mentioning. If your medication label has a name on it, that name needs to match your ID exactly. This rarely causes problems, but it has caused problems. If your prescription says Robert and your passport says Bob, that's probably fine. If your prescription is in your maiden name and your passport is in your married name, consider getting an updated prescription before you travel. Pills are straightforward enough. Liquids are where things get more interesting, and where TSA logic starts operating on a frequency the rest of us can't quite access. By the way, if you find this video helpful or like this style of content, please consider subscribing for more travel tips. You've heard of the 3-1-1 rule. Liquids, gels, and aerosols must be 3.4 ounces or less, fitting in a single 1-quart bag with 1 bag per passenger. That's the rule for regular toiletries. Medical liquids are exempt. If you have prescription liquid medication, you can bring more than 3.4 ounces. If you need liquid cough medicine, saline solution, prescription eye drops, insulin, or any other medically necessary liquid, the 3-1-1 rule does not apply to you. This also applies to things you might not immediately think of as medical. Liquid vitamins, diabetic juice boxes for blood sugar emergencies, larger bottles of contact lens solution, gel packs for keeping insulin cool, prescription creams and ointments. Even some over-the-counter items like Voltaren gel or prescription-strength hydrocortisone can qualify. But here's the catch that trips people up. You absolutely must declare these items. When you get to the security checkpoint, tell the TSA officer that you have medically necessary liquids. Say those words out loud. I have medically necessary liquids for separate screening. Then pull your medical kit out of your bag and place it in a bin by itself, separate from your regular toiletries. The agent will screen it separately. They might swab it for explosives residue. They might examine it visually. This takes an extra minute or two, and it is not a problem. What is a problem is trying to sneak oversized liquids through without declaring them. The X-ray catches them, and alarm sounds. Now you're getting pulled aside for additional screening while everyone behind you waits. And in some cases, items that would have been permitted with declaration get confiscated because you tried to hide them. The irony here is rich. TSA considers a full water bottle a security threat, but will happily let you through with a completely empty one. The water itself isn't dangerous apparently. The container holding nothing? Perfectly safe. Make it make sense. But this is the system we have, and declaring your medical liquids is how you work within it without incident. So declare up front. It's faster, it's easier, and it's the right way to do it. Now let's address something that makes a lot of travelers nervous, even though it shouldn't. Needles, syringes, and medical devices. Yes, you can bring needles on a plane. Yes, you can bring syringes. This surprises a lot of people, but it makes sense when you think about it. Millions of Americans require daily injections for diabetes, autoimmune conditions, fertility treatments, and other medical needs. Air travel would be impossible for these people if needles were banned. The rule is simple. Needles and syringes are permitted when accompanied by the medication they're used with. Bring your insulin vial with your insulin syringes. Bring your injectable medication with its associated supplies. Keep everything together in your medical kit. What you shouldn't do is pack loose syringes without any medication present. That raises obvious questions, and they're questions you don't want to answer at airport security while your boarding time ticks closer. For safety and organization, consider using a small hard-sided sharps container for your used and unused needles. It keeps everything contained and clearly identifies what it is. Medical devices are permitted as well. Insulin pumps, continuous glucose monitors, EpiPens, inhalers, CPAP machines, all allowed without any special paperwork for domestic travel. If you're wearing a medical device through the body scanner, inform the TSA officer before you walk through. Just say, I'm wearing an insulin pump, or I have a medical device. They'll note it, and if the scanner flags something, they already know what it is. You might get a pat down instead of additional scanning, which is fine. Some people with medical devices prefer to skip the body scanner entirely and request a pat down from the start. That's your right, and you don't need to justify it or explain yourself. Everything we've discussed so far applies to domestic US travel. International travel is a different story entirely, and this is where things can go seriously wrong if you're not prepared. Let's start with something that seems simple, but can actually ruin your trip. Over-the-counter medications. Tylenol, Advil, allergy pills, antacids. Stuff you can buy at any drugstore without a prescription. For domestic US travel, bring what you want. Original bottles or not, no limits, no declarations necessary for pills. For international travel, these same medications can land you in a customs interrogation room. Something that catches travelers completely off guard. Sudafed, The nasal decongestant you can buy at any pharmacy in America is illegal in Japan. Not restricted, not controlled, illegal. You can be arrested for bringing it into the country. The same medication sitting in millions of American medicine cabinets right now is treated as contraband the moment you land in Tokyo. Codeine, which is present in some over-the-counter pain relievers and cough syrups in certain countries, is treated as a narcotic in Greece and the UAE. What's sold casually in one country gets you detained by customs in another. Benadryl has restrictions in Japan and Zambia. Common sleep aids run into problems in various countries. The medication you take every night at home, without a second thought, might be on a controlled substance list somewhere else. Before any international trip, research every single medication you're bringing, not just prescriptions, every medication. Check the embassy website of your destination country. Look up specific drugs. If you have any doubt whatsoever, contact the embassy directly and ask. "I didn't know" is not a defense that customs officials accept. They don't care that it's legal where you came from. They care about their laws, and ignorance doesn't create an exception. This brings us to documentation, which is where international travel gets serious, and where a little preparation can save you from a lot of grief. TSA handles your departure from the United States. They have one set of rules. When you land in another country, that country's customs officials have their own rules, and their rules are frequently stricter. For international travel with prescription medications, you need what I call the Trinity. Sounds a bit dramatic, I know. But these 3 documents work miracles when you're standing at a foreign customs desk trying to explain why you have a bag full of pills. First, original labeled containers, not pill organizers. Original pharmacy bottles with your name, the medication name, dosage, and pharmacy information clearly printed. In many countries, a pill organizer full of unidentified tablets is a massive red flag that invites questions you don't want to answer. Original containers remove all ambiguity. Second, copies of your prescriptions. Paper copies that you get from your doctor or pharmacy before you leave. This proves you have a legitimate prescription for each medication. Third, a signed letter from your doctor. This is the document that solves almost every problem. It should be on official letterhead and include your full legal name and date of birth, matching your passport exactly. It should list each medication by both brand and generic name, the condition being treated, the dosage and quantity you're traveling with, and your doctor's contact information, signature, and date. For controlled substances, the letter should also include your doctor's DEA number, which is the registration number that authorizes them to prescribe controlled substances. Is this overkill for most trips? Probably. Most people cross most borders without anyone looking twice at their pill bottles. But when there is a problem, this documentation solves it instantly. Without it, you're arguing with a customs official who has complete authority over whether you enter their country with your medications or without them. That's not an argument you want to have without paperwork. Certain countries require additional permits for specific controlled substances. Singapore, for example, treats medication importation with the kind of seriousness usually reserved for nuclear materials. ADHD medications require advance approval from their health sciences authority for supplies over 3 months, and you need to apply at least 2 weeks ahead. If you're traveling anywhere with controlled substances, research the specific requirements for that destination and apply for any necessary permits well before your trip. You've done all the preparation. Now let's talk about the actual checkpoint experience and how to get through it smoothly. You've packed correctly, you have your documentation. Now you're at the airport. First, give yourself extra time. Not your normal buffer, but an additional 30 minutes on top of what you'd usually allow. Most of the time you won't need it, but when you do need it, you really need it, and you'll be grateful you built in that cushion. Walk up to the checkpoint with your medical kit already accessible. When you load your bins, pull out that clear bag with your medications and place it in its own bin. If you have medically necessary liquids, tell the officer before your bag goes through the x-ray. Stay calm and be matter-of-fact about it. You're not doing anything wrong. You're following the rules exactly as they're designed. If any medication gets flagged for additional screening, cooperate and answer questions directly. If an officer says something can't go through, don't argue with the frontline agent. Instead, politely ask to speak with the supervisor. You have the right to travel with legally prescribed medications, and supervisors generally know the rules better than newer agents. Now, one important note that I have to mention. Medical marijuana and CBD products containing more than 0.3% THC are federally illegal on any flight involving the United States. Even if you're flying from one legal state to another legal state. Even if you have a medical card. Federal law applies in airports and on aircraft, and federal law doesn't recognize state marijuana exemptions. TSA isn't actively searching for these products. But if they find them during routine screening, they're required to involve law enforcement. Don't put yourself in that position. Before we wrap up, there's one more thing you should know about, a free resource that makes all of this easier, and that almost nobody takes advantage of. There's a service called TSA Cares. This is a free program that arranges for a passenger support specialist to meet you at the security checkpoint and guide you through the entire screening process. They handle questions about your medications, they communicate with the screening officers, and they make the whole experience dramatically smoother. It's designed for travelers with medical conditions, disabilities, or anyone who's anxious about the screening process. There's no cost and there's no downside. Call 855-787-2227 or submit a request at TSA.gov at least 72 hours before your flight. A real person will be assigned to help you through security. I've talked to people who've used this service and they consistently say it transformed their airport experience. Yet, almost nobody knows it exists. It's one of those government programs that actually works well and helps people, which might explain why it's not better publicized. You can also use the My TSA app or the What Can I Bring page on TSA.gov to look up specific items before you travel. Not sure if something's allowed? Search for it. The database is comprehensive and updated regularly. Let's bring all of this together. The essential medications go in your personal item, the bag that never leaves your side. Build a dedicated medical kit in a clear bag, separate from your toiletries, and keep it accessible. Pack enough medication for your trip plus at least 5 extra days. For domestic travel, TSA allows unlimited pills and medically necessary liquids above 3.4 ounces. Declare liquids at security. For international travel, bring original containers, prescription copies, and a signed doctor's letter. Research destination restrictions for every medication, including over-the-counter. Give yourself extra time at the checkpoint, stay calm, and know your rights. And use TSA Cares. It's free, it's easy, and it exists specifically to help that woman in Rome whose bag got lost. With the right preparation, her blood pressure medication, thyroid pills, and everything else she needed would have been in the bag under her seat. The bag that landed with her, the bag nobody took. 10 minutes of planning. That's the difference between a story about a ruined vacation and a story about a wonderful trip. If you found this useful, subscribe. I make videos about navigating airports and air travel with no fluff, just the information you actually need. There's another video on screen right now that covers a related topic. Click it, and I'll see you there.